Welcome to the Renegade Yogi Podcast Experience. Join myself, Zorananda, and this episode's guest as we explore yoga in the modern world. Prepare yourself as we will experience yoga like never before. Hi, and welcome to the first episode of the Renegade Yogi Podcast Experience. I'm your host, Zorananda, and I'm here today virtually with an incredible human being. He is the host of My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast, and largely the reason why I'm even here with my own podcast. I originally thought that I was going to start in about 2 years from now, thinking that the whole process of getting a podcast started and getting it out there was too daunting on my own. So he invited me on to the podcast network that he started and into the community of podcasters that he's a part of, which is a huge blessing because it gets me in to a flow of people that will hopefully and thankfully grow this podcast a little more easily. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mark Steeves.
You're so kind to boost me up like this, because I can say the same thing about like the Grimerica show or Tinfoil Hat and how their show synchronistically fit into my life. So to hear that my show has been doing that for you is just, it means so much to me, because I think that that's not anything special to me. You know, I don't want to try to boost my ego up from that and say like, oh, look at how, I'm weaving this synchronistic web through the yogi's life. It's like, no, not at all. It's like, we're all participating. We're all co-creating a reality together, right? So because Yogi and I are on the same frequency, I'm investigating things in the moment. Yogi's investigating things in the moment. We're aware in the moment. So to pick up on the same things and notice those similarities, you're noticing the similarity in the frequency of the people. I think that's really where life is going right now. I think the veil has been dropped, and there's a certain amount of energetic presence here on the planet that wasn't available, maybe to me at least, a couple years ago. So maybe that's something I've done. Maybe that's something with the global planet shift that people talk about, because I know there's so many people that I know, a lot of people that I care deeply about who are waking up, and I think that it's about time for folks like you and I to present our ideas in this way, in this non-confrontational way. Because if you think about it, it's like a TV or a movie program or a radio program. There is a lack of choice there. You're being presented amounts of content that have been pre-chosen by other people who are basically trying to think what you're interested in. Like this whole psychology of marketing is, well, what are people, what's going to make people like our product? How are we going to sell it? So I think with podcasting, what's so beautiful and interesting is that I'm just putting this shit out here and seeing what happens. And if somebody comes along and listens to it, that's great. And I've had the, really fortunate blessing of being friends with Sam Tripoli and being on his show multiple times. And that's definitely gotten my show more eyes than it would have before. I had a podcast that was very small previously that just kind of flopped, and that was fine because it wasn't a great idea, and you have to be able to recognize that and move forward. And that's what I'm trying to do with my podcast, is move forward in my life in a way where people can possibly come along with me, in the sense of like, hey, I'm interested in this stuff too. I took something beneficial away from this podcast today. Mark put a lot of effort into it. Maybe I'll sign up for his Patreon, and that's where it becomes valuable for us as podcasters. But I think really, what I've learned on my journey of self-improvement is the connection to this community of like-minded people is what I really value. And it's really, again, I really am so grateful that you've started this, that I've inspired you to do it, that I was able to talk you into it, so to speak. And yeah, man, I'm excited because this is just the beginning.
The whole sentiment around building a community, it's not so easy either. In a sense where to have trust in what we're doing and what we're bringing out there, I can't help but think that there's going to be a natural amount of scrutiny around just like the value in what I'm offering here. But then what I remind myself with is that it's a slow drip process. And I think what obscures other creators and the like possibility of just kind of self-sabotage is that because of social media and this pressure of having a viral video or whatever, that they need to hit like these numbers, right? And rather than thinking that you're interacting with people, the views that you see as a number, those are actually people who have taken the time to listen to what you've said. So I think that
Well, I'll tell you what,
aspect, yeah.
Yogi, I think that's even, I would recommend not even thinking like that. And maybe that's
Yeah.
going to sound crazy, but listen, we as men, we know that we need to be able to be self-reliant. And I think when we're putting ourselves on this kind of comparison rack with other men, it doesn't feel right. You wouldn't
No.
do that, right? So think about your podcast in the same way. Like, your podcast is you. Stand up, be yourself, and the right people will be attracted to that. And I think that it's more about working on yourself, and a podcast is kind of just an extension of yourself if you choose to make it that way. I think there's plenty of formats to shows that are very collaborative and multiple people's energies are involved. My show, it's kind of really driven by me with the help of my co-host, who is a musician, makes everything sound great. But as far as like the personality of the show, it's me. I'm picking the guests, I'm driving the questions, and I think that's what's important, because I want to have an authentic connection with people, in that sense of like, hey, I'm just putting out there the kind of show that I would want to listen to. Obviously, I don't listen to my own show. It's kind of hard to do that. I listen to it in real time. Maybe when I'm editing, I listen to it, but
I've come out with plenty of videos like on Instagram and stuff like that. And I do go back and I listen to my voice, and I listen to refine. So I'll like what I'm hearing, but then I will notice what it is about the content that can go in a direction that will improve on inspiring people. And I think that's the correlation between that sense of building community and also the type of guests that you end up having on your show, right? And how the caliber grows because of how the community grows, right? And so for me, I used to think that way of like, well, I want to get as many viewers as possible to keep going. But I've just really sat down over these last 2 months and I really worked on myself to think, no, that's not it anymore. The point of it is to be consistent and come out with content weekly and talk about the things that I'm passionate about, have the guests on that are close to me, that can have really amazing conversations. And then eventually, naturally, I'm going to be like a magnet for people that want to have conversations with me, right? And the reason why I was so wholeheartedly jumped in to produce this with you is that it gave me the opportunity immediately to connect to a community, right? And to see that I'm not alone in this, and that there is support, and there's going to be an opportunity to grow way more than if I just tried to really carve a path by myself, right? And try to like only focus in on just me doing it. And so it feels so good to be a part of a team. And that just is what reminds me of even like being in a yoga studio and practicing with people, right? That I'm around all these people, and we're all in it together. We're all struggling on the postures together. We're all breathing together. And so that's the kind of direction that I want to take the podcast, is that it's not only going to be like listening to these conversations. I'm going to have guests on that are going to play guitar and do kirtan and do meditations. And that's why I added the experience on the end. So it's the like Yogi Podcast Experience, right? And it's so cool because I looked up the definition for renegade, and at first I was like, oh, that doesn't really, I don't know why that doesn't seem like it fits. But then I really thought about it, because renegade is someone who like breaks away from something and like, what was the term used? Like denounces themselves or betrays, right? But I realized that in my yoga journey, I actually entered into two different schools of yoga, where there was the Agama yoga practice and then the Akanda yoga practice. And what started to happen in my realization that the Agama yoga system in school out of Thailand just started turning really corrupt. And it was all about it's no longer about like community yoga. It's just like this weird distorted tantra and multiple partners, and like, but not in a light way. It was just getting really gross. And then when I looked at my teacher now, Yoga Rishi Vishwaketu, and his school Akanda Yoga, it was just a beacon of light. There was just so much more purity. And I ended up betraying the original school that I was in, and I jumped into Akanda Yoga wholeheartedly and fully. And so I am a renegade yogi in that sense, because I actually did the right thing of breaking away from something that actually turned into a cult to something that is an actual legitimate yoga school led by a PhD Himalayan yoga master, right? So I've considered all this in the last few months, and that I want to just lead people into an experience that they can enjoy. So it has nothing to do with like, if you listen to this podcast, you don't have to start doing yoga, you know, like you don't have to start going to yoga classes and do all this shit and go buy Lululemon and whatever, right? Like you can just have an experience that brings you into yourself at a time where it's the most needed, I think, right? And to join that community. And if you're inspired to sit down for 5 or 10 minutes more a day and just listen to your thoughts and meditate, then that's a win for me, right? Because that whole dichotomy of the schools that I was in, I learned a lot from what not to do from the Agama school. Like that was like, I'm never ever taking that approach. You know, like my teacher says, you know, my students are my friends. So I treat them as friends, you know, and there's an equanimity about that I really appreciate. So what I really like about your podcast and is your ability to grasp ideas and integrate them really quickly. And I saw this at firsthand, and I'm forgetting who your guest was, but you guys were talking about the chakras. And I just remember the podcast I did with you on yours, and I was explaining all the chakras to you, and you were like, holy shit, like that makes so much sense. And then like a month later, I hear you completely nail it. And I was just wondering, I was like, holy shit, like I think that is a sign of the era that we're in. That with all this technology and all this grasp on like so much information that comes in, that we can literally just hear things now and grasp it without the arduous task of studying it, right? So yeah, especially with you, that's what I thought was really cool, is like your just ability to integrate was just so on point, and that's inspiring to me. And yeah,
Thank you.
so I guess my question is, what do you attribute that to? Like, is it a combination of things, or can you like kind of narrow in like what it is that you do or have done to get you to be able to do that?
Plants have the power to make you feel radiant, healthy, and alive. At Wild Boom Botanicals, our mission is to help you heal your body with herbal remedies and holistic health education. Each product is created to preserve the highest integrity of the plant for its optimum healing power, and each ingredient is chosen carefully to ensure we formulate the most effective remedies. Now more than ever, we need healing that changes the way we live on this planet, not only for ourselves, but for the earth itself. The plants can help us heal, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you pointing that out. It's a combination of being present. I try really hard to be present. And, the podcast, it creates a zone where it's structured and I'm able to be present. I really want to be present in every moment with every relationship I have, professional, private, personal. That's something I'm working on right now. But I think the studying, the listening, the arduous task, as you called it, I think it becomes a lot easier when you just take it one step at a time and you're present with yourself and you notice, what the universe is hinting at. And I think that talking to you, that conversation we had in combination with, everything I've learned about chakras in the past, you helped crystallize what I've known, right? So in that moment, you kind of, I had my iron, you had yours, we sharpened each other's iron, and then you noticed, oh shit, yeah, he came away from that with some, higher knowledge, higher learning. And you're absolutely right. I did take your words and integrated them because I respect your knowledge, Yogi. It really was a pleasure having you on my show. And I think that's a part of it. As a podcast host, I really owe it to you to be present in that moment and be able to respond and react and keep the conversation flowing, so engage the listeners, because I want you to get some, sales on your book or whatever you got going on. I want to boost you up as my guest. I think that's really important. Some people might not like that vibe, like, oh, is everybody a salesman? Everybody's trying to sell me something. It's like, no, it's consensual. You're listening to the podcast for free, people. Okay. So if you're inspired enough to buy something, then that's great. And that's what I want to be able to facilitate. Because I know personally, I've had so many times where I've listened to a podcast and I ran out and I got that person's book and it integrated into my life. And now it's a part of me. I mean, look behind me. There's probably like 5 or 6 just over my shoulder that I've
Yeah.
bought specifically from listening to podcasts. So, podcast, you listen to a podcast. When are we going to shut up about podcasts? But guess what, folks? I mean, it's just a word that kind of describes something that's so true to being human. The oral tradition, the passing down spoken word to people has existed before writing. So now we have technology to be able to create a campfire kind of scenario at any moment of any day. And you get to work on something with your hands while you're listening to a podcast, and it opens up that back door and the information kind of just comes in and feeds your consciousness. And you might not even be conscious of this learning process at first, but then you're in a podcast and you say the right thing and somebody noticed it and you're like, oh shit, you're right. I did know the chakra thing. I was able to recite it correctly. And maybe the person I was speaking to in that moment then was able to take that revelation and move on and integrate that, and I think that's the synchronistic exchange that's really cool, is being able to not only get something out of it synchronistically, but give that back to people.
How I am going to relate that to yoga right now is there's something called the Upanishads. So way back in the earliest days of yoga, it came out through the Vedas. And the Veda just actually translates to science. Like, this is the crazy thing about yoga. But anyways, the Vedas were the like metaphysical and philosophical and psychological teachings that came from the Rig Vedas and the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita. And what happened is that there were some Brahmins who didn't agree with the Brahmins that were spouting the Vedas. So they left and went into the forest and created the Upanishads. And the Upanishads is literally just translates to sitting beneath his feet. So where you would have this Brahmin who became an ascetic and left and lived in the forests, lived in the caves, who would have a small group of people that he would disseminate a newer version of the Vedas or a newer version of the philosophies of the Mahabharata and the Rig Vedas. And so I see that's essentially what we have happened with the podcasts, right? Where you have these people who have broken away from the kind of legacy media, and they were like, you know what, we don't like the system that's in place anymore. So we're not going to do radio anymore. We're not going to do television. We're going to start our own thing because the internet is providing something new. So then they start a podcast where suddenly they just have a small grouping of people who's listening to them that ends up growing, right? And that's essentially what is, I think, just a part of our nature, is that with any system that we have in place, there's going to be a point where there's some kind of corruption that takes place. There's some kind of disinformation or whatever you want to call it, where people start breaking away and they start investing in their own way of understanding how to be a better person or whatever, right? Because there's like millions of podcasts out there now, right? And what I really like about the whole podcast sphere is that people can get a greater sense of who someone is, right? Because social media is on this downward spiral of so much hatred, right? And it's, I don't know who you can blame for that, right? Everyone is participating in it. When you now have this opportunity to tap into something where you can get the entire perspective and you can get an entire understanding of someone by how many episodes that you listen to them, rather than just this little post on a screen that you can just pick apart immediately. That in itself is a whole rabbit hole. But focusing on this whole idea of the Upanishads, where back then it was a kind of still pedestal thing, right? And I think you see that in the yoga world, right? And that's why there's all these kind of like yoga gurus who are being called out for the terrible shit that they're doing, is because they have maintained this kind of pedestal position of the Upanishad, of sitting over people and disseminating knowledge without the people actually having any real input in what this person can do or say, right? And I think a typical thing is when a guru tells their disciples, you have to live simply, you have to live below or at these means, and you pay me for what I'm doing. And then you end up having this guru that lives this lavish life. And what I think the podcasting world gives as an opportunity is for someone like me who wants to be a yoga teacher and is a yoga teacher, wants to disseminate yoga information, that pedestal is removed, right? Because any normal person can be on my podcast and be a guest. Where if I were to have stayed in that realm of the traditional yoga master, right? All my disciples, they can't ever be on my level. And so that is a whole new opening, I find, in an opportunity in setting forth a new wave of yoga, and it's obviously already happening. There's probably 100,000 yoga podcasts that are just doing the same thing.
Well, none like this, because I think most yoga podcasts would probably stick to the, plastic, mainstream. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my assumption. So hopefully our crowd, the people that are into, this kind of spiritual intrigue and all of the things that come with questioning the mainstream, this is a more proper podcast for them. I mean, Renegade Yogi says it all, right? I mean, yeah, I'm excited to know who your next guest is going to be and what kind of topics you guys are going to get into, because this is just the beginning, I mean, unless you want to get into some self-mastery stuff, because personally, I think I could hear some of that right now.
Yeah. So my idea is a merger, right? So when I have a guest on and the things that they're passionate about, that I can introduce yoga into that passion, and to show that it has nothing about me changing that person's life. It has nothing to do about me telling that person that they have to stop everything that they're doing and only focus on these things, because yoga is an addition to your life. It's not meant to take you away from anything. So you can still have all the crazy passions that you have, all the desires and everything that you want out of yourself, and adding yoga into your life at your own capacity and to your own pace is going to really help accelerate how you get through manifesting those desires in a holistic and a wholesome way, right? And so that is what I think self-mastery is about, is that you become the driver and the passenger. And so that you're not only the force that's going to take you into the future that you want, you're also observing how you're surrendering into the progress that's taking place in leveling up each day, right? And at the pace that you're going to go. And my relationship with yoga over the last few years really changed, because when I was in my early 20s up until like I was 28, man, like I did everything I could to become as flexible as I could, to become as strong as I could. And it led me to injuring myself in multiple ways. And so in this last few years, I really had to slow down and look at, like, why would I want to continue a trajectory with that, like that, if it's just going to keep injuring myself? And so there's this saying, stirum and sukham. So stirum is steadiness and sukham is softness. And so when you're approaching the practice, you want to balance between the two. So if you're going way too strong in the steadiness, way too strong in the power and like in the stance of it, and you're not allowing yourself to introduce the softness of it, that steadiness is going to cause those injuries. And that's essentially what's happened to me. And so now I'm at this position where I'm having to introduce more of this softness so that I have this balance between the two. And that balance allows you to see the longevity that's involved, right? So I have my sleeve or my arm covered up, but I have a massive tattoo of Shiva on my arm. And people ask me why I did that. And it's because yoga is for the rest of my life. From the day that I started, from the day that this was put on my arm to the day that I die, yoga my entire life. And that sounds scary. People will hear that and be like, holy shit, that's intense, right? And so it acts as a reminder that I can slow down with it. There's going to be times where the opportunity comes where I can quicken the pace and I'm getting going. I'm like, okay, good. I'm progressing. I can quicken. And then I can slow down and remind myself, okay, this is for the rest of my life. And so that goes into the self-mastery too, is that you can start introducing spiritual concepts and allow them to integrate at your pace. And that is what's really going to determine how you expand more in your life in all directions, not just in this kind of overt spiritual 5D, gotta enter into a new world and new earth and new all this stuff. No, it's going to be, how am I making more money for my family? How am I learning about investing? How am I doing at my job? Do my colleagues like me? Does my boss want to give me promotion and raises? What are my passions? Do I want to start having a side gig? And do I want to start doing these things of, do I want to read more? Do I want to write a book? So the addition of yoga is going to allow you to expand and have a capacity for all these things. And I think that's a crucial thing at the end here, is that people will ask, well, how do you do all that stuff? Like, how do you have a job? How do you make music? How do you have a podcast? How do you do yoga? How do you meditate? How do you do all these things? And it's because I'm applying a principle of expansion and really learning what that means. And so yoga, which means to unify, is that you're unifying all these things under one umbrella. They're no longer separate, right? They're all under this umbrella of unification. So they all bleed into each other some way, where your 9-to-5 job gives you money. That money you make, you go, okay, instead of spending it on going out or ordering expensive food every day, for this week, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to save that money and I'm going to get an online membership to do this yoga thing, right? Or I'm going to save that money and I'm going to buy a guitar, right? So you start to see how the expansion of your consciousness starts to just unfold itself in manifesting the decisions that you make in just your mundane life. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Like, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, I feel like that's empowering, man. I'm feeling it. I don't know. There's so much on my mind right now, Yogi, but there's like, this feeling of putting your best foot forward. So how are you going to put your foot forward into the podcasting space? What's the message you want to leave the people who are listening to this first episode?
Today's episode of the Renegade Yogi Podcast Experience is sponsored by Wild Bloom Botanicals. Wild Bloom Botanicals is going to be a regular sponsor of this show because it is a creation of my own fiance, Alicia Hamilton. And has she ever done a wonderful job making the most beautiful packaging and products to serve all your needs, from a mushroom cacao blend to a rose powder to a golden milk powder to glycerin-based tinctures like an energy tincture or a mood tincture or a dream tincture, whatever you name it, Wild Bloom Botanicals has it. So go to wildbloombotanicals.com, and when you pick the products, go to the checkout and enter in RYPE, RIPE. That's RYPE for anything in the store and get 10% off. So again, go to wildbloombotanicals.com, enter in the coupon code RIPE, and get yourself a nice good bundle of herbs, powders, tinctures, essential oils, and get yourself nice and healthy. Get yourself nice and revitalized. You deserve it. Just a simple consistency of, doing 2 episodes a week where I have one guest a week, and then I do a solo episode where I can just really focus in on a topic. So say, I'm going to do a chakra series where each episode I'm just going to dive into one chakra and really get into everything about it, and then kind of theme the content around that. And really just allow myself to receive anyone who's interested in listening to this, and just one step at a time, and provide an experience for people. So for example, one thing right at the end here, what I want to do is just to do some simple breathing and meditating just for about a minute or two. And that way, wherever anyone is listening to this, they have that moment where they can just stop and breathe and focus in on just the subtlety of that and whatever comes up for guiding, because usually for guided meditations, I kind of make up on the spot. But so
let's do that now.
Yeah. So wherever you are, eyes open or eyes closed. Obviously, if you're driving, keep your eyes open. But sitting comfortably, we're just going to take 3 deep breaths. So first, nice deep inhale through the nose. Exhaling out through the mouth. Inhaling through the nose. Exhaling through the mouth. Last one. Deep inhale in. Hold the breath. 3, 2, 1. Exhale everything out. At the very bottom of the breath, hold your breath for 3, 2, 1. Allow yourself to come to a natural breathing, just allowing your body to take control of the inhale and the exhale. Where I'd like you to place your focus is right at the center of your chest, right into your heart. And feel like with every exhale, there's this subtle magnetic pull from your heart that's pulling your attention and pulling your gaze down into your heart. And as you inhale, feel how your lungs hug your heart. And as you exhale, feel how your lungs create this space for your heart to open, creating more of a magnetic pull and feeling like there's this grounding happening as you breathe and relax and just simply be with your heart. This is the center that is perpetuating your life with every pulse, with every beat, the circulation of blood, the circulation of the nervous system, the air that's going in through your nostrils, into your lungs, and everything that's expelled out. This whole process of movement that's happening so subtly right from this place in your center. And with knowing all of that, planting a simple seed of gratitude. And just as soon as you hear that word and you have that in your mind, gratitude in your heart, notice how it immediately interacts with all of that circulation and how it spreads that gratitude. Just the simplest little thought, the simplest little seed, and that gratitude grows immediately and grows. And the gratitude doesn't have to be for anything in particular. Just the idea, the feeling of gratitude. And we're going to take a deep inhale. Hold the breath, hold the gratitude in that space. Feel it expand with the breath. Exhale, release everything out. If you have your eyes closed, you can gently open your eyes. And just simply notice how that carries on through your day. You can totally forget about it, and suddenly 5 hours from now, you're going to be like, holy shit, I'm so grateful. And really, that is the essence of yoga. How we can just make that simple little shift. Gratitude, compassion, unconditional love. And it feels great.
Wow. I feel so at peace right now, Yogi. I feel love. I feel power. I feel care for others. It's just so many things going through my mind because this conversation is so inspiring, like I got a little flustered before you did that. I'm excited for the potential of this and everything you've taught me, and it's exciting to learn more.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you so much for lighting and igniting the initial fire, because that is that's what really makes this special. So with that, thank you for anyone and all of you who are listening to this first episode. My guest today, again, was Mark Steeves. He is the host and the creator of My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. Go check it out. He has got a Patreon. He has it up on Spotify and many other places. But
listen to it on Podcast Addict, Podfriend. Use all of the decentralized apps to listen to this decentralized thought wave.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thank you again. And if there's anywhere else you want to direct people to where you can be found, if there's any social media, or if you want to just stick to the more unconventional ways, that's totally your call.
No, Yogi, I got to thank you so much for having me as the first guest and allowing me to participate in this journey. I hope we co-create more and more together. And for those who are interested in learning more about what I got going on, I have a website, www.myfamilythinksimcrazy.com. And then from there, you can find everything else. And we got Instagram. You can get in touch with me, DM me. I am looking to talk to people. Come on, get in my DMs. I'll have you on my show. You can call in. I don't really care. We're doing a whole new format. So just come on over and join the family.
Great. Well, you can, of course, find me on Instagram, yogi.zorananda. You can go to my website, zorananda.com, where you can get my new book, Future Life Progression, Meeting Your Future Self. All my music is up there as well, Mystical Rhythms, and all the meditations that go with the book. So again, thank you everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy.